So last year I went on a journey to try and finish as many books from my physical TBR as I possibly could, and I actually made quite a lot of progress. And one of the things I was doing while I was trying to make progress was recording my thoughts on every book that I finished if it was on my TBR. So some books, like ebooks and audiobooks that I just read through Libby or Hoopla or something, I didn't record my thoughts on, but if I physically owned it, I did. And I was compiling all those books into my Clear My Shelves videos, but at the end of the year some of them just didn't make it into any sort of video, and I figured that I just wanted to put out the footage that I filmed. I don't know if any of these videos would have been finished in this new year. It's just not really aligning with what I want to put out on my channel. I'd still love my Clear My Shelves videos, so I might do a couple here and there, but overall I don't think a lot of these books would fit into them, and the footage is now old, so I just want to put it all in one spot so you can see my opinions on any of these books that I read in 2023. I will timestamp everything. I know that this looks like a long video, but you can pick and choose what you want to watch, because some books you might not be interested in hearing my thoughts on. Some books I'm not even interested in going back and editing my thoughts on. So I just wanted to give you an option to watch these reviews if you wanted to. I do have one more Clear My Shelves video I'm putting out this coming up Friday as my bonus video. But other than that, I think this will get me all caught up on the footage that I've had since last year. So I guess I'm just gonna let you pick and choose what you want to watch. If you want to watch all of it, thank you so much. And I guess I'll see you at the end of this video. Hi, so I totally forgot to tell you that I decided to DNF this book. I have no update other than I made it to 32 pages into this one, and I just decided that it wasn't for me. I didn't like the writing very much. I felt like it was just very bleak. I think that's the best way that I could explain it, that it just made me feel icky in some way. I think the main character was just making really poor choices, and I just didn't enjoy her as a character so far. And then I looked up a couple of reviews, nothing with spoilers, just like general reviews, and people were saying that it's just a very devastating book, and I am just not interested in that. So I partially want to like soft DNF this, but I also might just go and get some store credit for this by selling it back to the stores. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I just don't want to be in like a sad, gut-wrenching mood, and this feels like it would put me there. So I decided to DNF this one. I'm a little bummed about it because I was excited because so many people adored this one. I just didn't feel like picking it up after those first 32 pages. I just couldn't pick it up anymore. So this is officially DNF'd. It's a bummer, but it is what it is. I really should have sat down and prepared some thoughts about this one, but we're just gonna wing it this time because I still have a little bit of daylight and I'm just gonna use it. But we're here to talk about lessons in chemistry. I really enjoyed this one. I will say, at the very beginning, I wasn't quite sure about it. The writing style has some like Frederick Bachman-esque, word that's coming to mind is cadence, but I don't know if that's correct. But it just has some quality, that's the word I'm looking for. A Frederick Bachman quality to it, where there's a lot of serious issues going on, but there's kind of a comical air about these things. I wasn't really sure about it. I was listening to it, some of the things were kind of funny, but every now and then I was just like, I don't think that this is gonna be for me. But the deeper I got into this book, the more I fell in love with these characters, and by the end, surprise, surprise, I was crying over them. So this book is following Elizabeth Zott, and at the very beginning we are finding out that she is a chemist and her daughter is like 5 years old, going into kindergarten, or she's already in kindergarten and can read in full sentences, and Elizabeth is just a little bit upset about what her life trajectory is because she is a chemist, but she is working as a TV show food host because she had to take this job for whatever reason. And so then we flash back to kind of how she ended up in that position and her being in very shitty situations because she's a woman who is in science, and men in the 60s just treated women like absolute trash, and they didn't believe that their place was in a work field. So it's following her and all of the hardships she has during that time, and then also the people that she meets, the people that she might fall in love with, and it's just following a journey of a woman's life in the 60s, a woman who wants to be a scientist and doesn't let society hold her back and hold her from her dreams. Like, she really just truly goes after it, and it's her inspiring other women to be more than what their husbands and other people tell them that they can be. So it just ended up having a really beautiful message, and I just started crying towards the end, just because thinking back on our grandmothers and great-grandmothers and great-great-grandmothers who might have not been able to live their dreams just because of the society that they grew up in, the people that they were surrounded with, the people that they were married to who might not have believed in their dreams and ambitions too. It just really got to me in that sense. The parts that might have been more sad in this, because there are some deaths in here, I didn't cry on those ones just because there was still a comical air about some of those things, but it was really that overarching message of like, look at where all of these women in the past have gotten us to now, that we have the privilege to be able to go out and follow our dreams and achieve things that they never could have even dreamed up for themselves. So I really enjoyed that message in the end. I haven't plugged this in Compile though to see what this ended up being rated as, but I definitely know it's going to be a 4. We'll see if it could be a 5. But I did really enjoy it, and I will be looking forward to anything else that Bonnie Garmis ends up putting out. So that's just a quick little update about this one. So I think I'm going to DNF this. I don't even think I've made it very far into it, maybe a couple of chapters, but I was getting a little concerned with the main characters' ages. So this is following, whatchamacallit, Cooper and Jace, it seems like, and we're only in Cooper's point of view at the very beginning, and he is 12 years old, and his father has just like told their family that he has had an affair for the last 5 years, and that the other woman that he's been with is now pregnant. She also has another son, and the back of this says that Cooper and Jace eventually like form some sort of relationship. But starting off like very early on, when Cooper goes over to meet his dad's like new family, he finds out that Jace has been calling Cooper's dad, which gave me a little bit of like a weird feeling. So I kept trying to read just a little bit more, but remembering that he was 12 years old, I started to get very, very worried that it was going to be like some sort of sexual relationship between him and Jace at a very young age. So I went ahead and looked it up on Goodreads, and I started reading some of the reviews, and people were saying that there's a plot point at the end. So this is going to be spoilers for anyone who might be interested in this book, but I guess there's a plot point at the end, like after 10 years or so have passed, they aren't sure if Jace is actually biologically related to Cooper. Like, I don't know what happens, but at some point I guess the dad potentially reveals that he could be Jace's biological father, and these two have, Cooper and Jace have formed a romantic relationship at that point, and they decide not to figure out if they are actually biologically related. And I don't want to go through that at all. I don't want to have to read anything that could be hinted at being incestuous, and even if it's not actually proven, I think those reviews say like you don't know at the end. I don't want that. I just don't want to read that. So we are gonna DNF this because I don't want to read something like that. I'm sure that according to a few of the reviews, like it had a purpose and it was well executed, but it's just not something that I'm interested in. I don't want that sort of angst. I don't want that sort of like mildly taboo relationship, because you don't actually know if they are related. But it did make me very uncomfortable that Jace calls Cooper's dad. So then they're 12 years old, like they're basically being raised together at some point, and they both call the same person dad. I don't know. I didn't like that. So we are gonna DNF this. I didn't make it very far into it anyway, so I don't feel like I wasted a lot of time. But yeah, just thought I would give you a little update on that. Okay, last night I finished Sulwe, and this was so sweet. It was honestly just a sweet little story. There wasn't a whole lot to it. It was one of the shorter picture books that I've ever read. So the story itself is just really, really short. There's only like a couple of sentences per page. Oh, that doesn't show you. Like this. It's just like small little things of text, but it's mostly about this little girl named Sulwe, and she doesn't like the color of her skin. She thinks that she is too dark, and her family members are all a little bit lighter than her, and she wants so badly to be lighter. And then after telling this to her mother, she also ends up having like a little bit of a celestial run-in that helps her come to love the color of her skin. So it was a super sweet story, but what really amps this book up is the illustrations. Let me find my favorite picture. I just think that the way that everything is shaded and the colors are just so beautiful. Everything is just so pretty to look at. I couldn't stop looking at everything in this one. I'll try not to show too much of it too, because if you want to read it, I don't want you to be spoiled for all of the beautiful illustrations. But yeah, it was a super sweet, super easy read. It took me maybe 10 minutes, but I'm very glad that I finally read this one. So I definitely recommend it if you are in the market for picture books. Okay, Sunny St. James. This one I have been putting off for way too long. I think I have put it on many TBRs. I've prioritized it so many times and then just never picked it up. For some reason, it just didn't draw me in. I just wasn't even aware what it was about. So had I read the synopsis, I feel like I would have been more eager to read it, but I did buy this because I liked other Ashley Herring Blake middle grades. I liked her middle grades a lot of it more than her adult romances, but her middle grades have really stuck out to me, and I've enjoyed pretty much all of them. And I will have to say that this is my least favorite, but if I were to go back and reread some of them, I think that I might lower my ratings towards them, because something that is very prevalent in these books is not having very great parents. None of these kids have very great parents, but we will bounce back to that in a second. So this one follows Sunny St. James, and she has a pretty bad heart and she needs a heart transplant, and that happens right at the very beginning of this book. And as she wakes up and realizes that she's no longer sick anymore, she does not have heart failure anymore, she sets out to achieve a checklist of things to restart her life. So she wants to get a new best friend, she wants to kiss a boy, and she wants to do things that she has never done before because she couldn't due to her illness. So that is the main plot of this story, but another aspect to this is that upon waking up, Sunny's mother, who she hasn't seen in 8 years, has officially come back into her life and wants to form a connection with her. And Sunny's caretaker, or the person who has been taking on the role of her mother, who was her biological mother's best friend, is really hesitant to let Sunny have this relationship with her biological mother. She's also very scared of Sunny's illness and just Sunny not being physically capable of doing the things that she really wants to do. So there's a lot of tension with both of Sunny's mother figures and mothers, and also just between Sunny and them, trying to not feel like a fragile little egg with her mother Kate, who has been taking care of her, and trying to figure out what her relationship is with her biological mother, because she has not been in contact for a very long time. So there is that part to it, and that is what made me not enjoy this book very much. Winding back to the last middle grade I read by Ashley Herring Blake, which was Hazel Bly in the Deep Blue Sea. I ended up really liking that book for Hazel Bly and her character and the journey that she went on, and I think I gave that book about 4 stars. But then I started to watch review videos and see some reviews and heard how many people were so angry at Hazel Bly's mom in that book, just because that mother kind of bordered on a little bit neglectful. She just almost ignored her daughter's fears and anxiety and struggles and whatnot in favor of worrying about her own. So that was something that I started to notice and think back on with the other books that I have read by this author, including Ivy Aberdeen, which is one of my favorite books that I have read. But those parents were also just slightly neglectful at certain moments and kind of pushed aside their children's needs and fears and didn't offer as much comfort as they could have to their daughter. So I started to notice that trend in this book as well, and that's what really got to me, because having parental figures in books that like never truly learn the wrongs of the things that they do is just hard to read sometimes. I don't know, it was just really grinding my gears how Sunny's biological mom was getting away with some of the secrets that she kept, and not having any sort of relationship with Sunny, not keeping in any sort of contact with Sunny for so many years. And then with Kate, her legal guardian, there was this whole deal where Sunny had asked Kate if she could call her mom when she was pretty young, and Kate told her no. And that just made me so mad, because this is the only mother that Sunny has really ever known, and she doesn't even get the right to call her mom just because Kate wasn't her biological mom. I don't know, it really bothered me. So I just had some issues with this book that I couldn't get over, but I think if that's something that you can look past and just follow the journey that Sunny goes on and the friendships that she makes and the discoveries that she makes about her sexuality and her dreams in life and what she wants to go on, then it's a much better book. But you do have to ignore the parents in this. Not as bad as some of the other books by Ashley Herring Blake, but still, to a degree, you have to ignore that aspect. So that's something I didn't love. It didn't make the book bad for me, it just annoyed me a little bit, if you know what I mean. So I ended up settling on about a 3-star, maybe 3.5 star for this one. It unfortunately didn't match what the highest rating of it was, but I can see why people would like this one. It just didn't work for me because I don't like crappy parents. So that is how I feel about this one. Hello! So it is not that long after finishing Sunny St. James, I decided to try and tackle a little bit more of the books in this video, and I have since completed They Called Us Enemy and The Complete Mouse by Art Spiegelman. So this one is George Takei, who I believe was an actor in Star Trek. And this was the one that I read first, and it is basically about George and his family's experience with the Japanese incarceration camps, internment camps, and it was really well done. It was such a really interesting story to follow. I had heard about it through my high school history classes and stuff, so I knew what happened, and it felt very similar to one story I feel like we read then that made me wonder if like I had actually heard of this one when I was in high school. But it just really showcased their experience and how strong his parents were throughout that time, and how they tried to make the best of their situation and make him and his younger brother and sister just feel like they were living regular life. And I was crying towards the end of it when he was talking about his father and just the things that he's learned from his dad and everything that his dad did. Oh my god, I'm gonna cry just thinking about it too. So it was super well done. I just was so appreciative that we got to see this side of things and hear his story and hear the way that his parents had impacted him and his life trajectory. And it was just a really well told memoir, autobiography. I'm not sure if I'm getting that term right, but I really enjoyed reading this one, and the illustrations sometimes were just so cute, but they were also so detailed at times too. There's, hold on, let me find it. Oh my god, right here. This one of him and his brother just like all wide-eyed and happy. So cute. So I really enjoyed the illustrations of this. I really enjoyed the information that we learned in this one, and I think that his parents were wonderful people. So that was a really good, easy read. Broke your heart too, to know like this was happening to people. It was like real events that happen, and US history is so frustrating sometimes, but I'm glad that we have this story being told. So I highly recommend this one if you have not already picked it up. And then the next 2 or 3 days, it took me quite a while to finish this one, I read The Complete Mouse, which was not as lighthearted as They Called Us Enemy, even though they both deal with vaguely similar things. It was set during the same time period with World War II, and this is Art Spiegelman's documentation of conversations that he had with his father, who had survived Auschwitz and everything that happened throughout Poland and Germany during World War II. So I really appreciated with this one that art did not make his father like an outstanding man. Like, he really just showed who his father was, and his father was not the greatest man at times, did not have the best ideals, did not have the best thought. He did not treat his family members in a great way, but he did still survive something so horrific. And showing his true colors and the type of man that he is was frustrating to read. Like, I got so angry with his dad at times, but then you would go back and hear his story and you'd feel sympathetic for him, and then you'd go back to being frustrated with him. So I really like that nuance, I guess, to the story, where some of the things his dad said and did were not necessarily forgivable because he had really bad prejudiced thoughts, or he just wasn't treating the people around him with the respect and dignity that they should have been treated with. Yet the things that he went through, it was also very admirable, the way that he made sure that he survived, the way that he was smart and thought ahead of so many things and was able to get himself to a point where he could survive the concentration camps. It was just such an interesting story, and I don't feel like I was quite as emotionally moved with this one as I was with They Called Us Enemy, just because I couldn't connect to, I think, Vladek, Art's father, and I just didn't emotionally connect with him, but it did make me just feel so sick to my stomach recounting all of the things that these people lived through, the family members that they lost. And in this one, halfway through, or at the end of part 1, you see that it's dedicated to Art's brother, who had died during the war, who he never met because he was born years and years after the war. So it was just so gut-wrenching to have those moments retold, to learn another family's story through that, because I personally feel like my schooling focused so heavily on the events of World War II. Like, that was something that all of high school boys are interested in, even high school girls were interested in. I personally read a ton of historical fiction set in World War II, just because I feel like every single year from middle school all the way through high school, we learned more and more events that happened, and hearing different family members and people tell their side of the story was super duper interesting. And it's heartbreaking every single time. So this one took a long time to read. It was a struggle to want to pick up a little bit, just because you knew that it was going to be heavier topics, but I just really did like the way that it was told and how honestly he just told his father's story and portrayed his father and the people around him. It was well done. It was really well done, and I think that if you haven't read it and you're interested in it, I would give it a go. I personally would recommend They Called Us Enemy over Mouse, mostly just because I liked the emotional element of this one a little bit more, and I kind of like the art in this one a little bit more too. It was much easier on the eyes. This one kind of made my eyes hurt a little bit because it's very, I can just open up to any page. It's very dense. Sometimes it's hard to follow along. It's harder to read physically too. That's the update that I have on those. So I guess I will see you when I have completed the next book for this video. I have read All My Rage by Sulwe here, and I loved this. I gave this 5 stars. It felt very much like I was reading an Angie Thomas book. Like, it had that same feeling that I get with all of Angie Thomas's books, all of her characters, the hardships that they go through, the ups and the downs, the friendships, the hurt that Angie Thomas is so good at writing. I felt those feelings for this story. So this one is about 2 friends who had like a bit of a moment together that kind of ruined their friendship, and it's been a couple of months, quite a bit of time, and oh, it's been a little while since I have read their names. Saladin and Noor are the 2 main characters, and Saladin's mom is really sick, and something happens at the very beginning that Noor kind of shows up for, and this rekindles their friendship and them needing to lean on each other throughout this really bad, really sad, really upsetting, tragic event that happens at the very beginning. And it was just a really good portrayal of friendship and hurt and grief and being in poor situations and trying to do the best that you can. It just had so much in it that I absolutely adored. I really enjoyed their friendship, their love that they had for each other. They were just really well done characters. So I was nervous to read this one because I didn't love the Ember and the Ashes series. I had a lot of issues with the characters, especially the main character, Laya, and I didn't like the way that she came off to me. She just felt so, I know better than everybody else, I don't listen to anything, and I just could not get on board with that character. So I was really worried that our main female character in this would give me that same feeling, but I ended up really loving her. I keep thinking about this book, so it was definitely one that was going to stick with me. So I get why it was so highly rated. It was so well done, and it was very different than her fantasy series too, because this is definitely a contemporary. There's no magic, nothing like that in it. And yeah, I just really liked it. I think that this is a good one. If you like any of Angie Thomas's books, I would give this one a go. It felt very much along those lines. What video did I end up putting these in? Because I don't remember. Anyway, I have finally finished The Roommate and the Intimacy Experiment by Rosie Danan, and I just have to say that these are still some of the ugliest covers I've ever seen in my entire life. I am so sorry to whoever designed them, whoever did the art for them. They are just hideous. This one especially, this one is like, okay. They look kind of real, but this one, they look terrifying. I'm sorry if that's so rude, but that's just how I feel. I just really don't like these covers. Anyway, these were okay. Neither of them were great. Neither of them blew me away. They had their moments, especially because a lot of them are female sex empowerment forward. They're very, women should own their own pleasure and know their bodies and have better communication, and it did some good things. I just feel like the characters don't stand out to me very much, and I won't think about them as much in the future. The more romance I read, I feel like these will just like find their way to the back of my mind. I did enjoy this one more than this one, but only slightly. In this one we have roommates, as the title says, and he is a porn star and she is a socialite, and together they decide to form a website of sorts where it's not quite porn, but it is ways for women to figure out their own sexuality and understand their bodies and learn how to communicate better with their partners and stuff. So they make this website surrounded around like female enjoyment, and that's pretty much it. And then they just kind of end up falling in love throughout that, and there's a few hiccups and bumps along the way, which is fine. It was fine. It was just a fine little romance. I didn't really have any major problems with it. I think that the third act drama doesn't stick out to me very much, so I think that it must have gone pretty decently or made some sense to me that I'm not like angry by it. But yeah, I just felt like both characters were a little bit dull, but that is okay. Then in this one, which I did like a little bit more, like I said, we have Naomi and some guy, Ethan, and he is a rabbi of a kind of failing synagogue, or just like one that needs a little bit of help, and he actually hires her to give intimacy lectures, like a professor in a sort of way. And so she has a course on how to be intimate with people and how to learn intimacy and communication with a partner, and along the way to make sure that she is giving proper information to these students, these churchgoers, I believe. They decide to follow along in the curriculum just to double check that everything is good to go. So I like the setup of this one better. I like that they were following like her 10-step program to being intimate. So I thought that was really fun, and I enjoyed Naomi as a character. She's a little bit dark and twisty. She has a bit of a backstory that you hear in book 1 too, which just made her an interesting character. So this one has already like stood out to me a little bit more. I've already forgotten more details of book 1 compared to this one, so I would recommend this one. But both of them are good. They're just not like outstanding. They're just cute little romances that you can read really quickly if you are interested in them. And they are sex positive and female enjoyment positive, which is very nice. So I gave both of them 4 stars, I believe. Hello. So I finished How to Fake It in Hollywood by Ava Wilder yesterday, and I just thought I would chat about it really quick here. It was fine. It was not a mind-blowing romance. It had some things that I liked, some things that I disliked. I think I ended on a 4-star for this one, but essentially this is a fake dating romance where both of them are actors, and in order to enhance their careers, their agents kind of set them up to fake date for about 6 months. And so our main character Gray and our other main character Ethan decide to go along with this plot because he has been a little bit out of the spotlight for 5 or so years after the death of his friend, and she is just like an up-and-coming actress who wants to have some bigger roles. I honestly don't think a lot of people will love this one. I enjoyed it because there wasn't an enemies to lovers sort of situation in this one. They seem to get off on the right foot and become friends pretty early on. Everything moves pretty quickly, and there's a lot of like sad backstories for both of them, mostly on his part. He has some troubles with alcoholism, and he's really struggling with the death of his friend from a few years ago. So there's a lot of like deeper, sadder moments in this one too, but I thought they were like a pretty decent couple. But I honestly don't think I'll think about this book very much after reading it. It was good enough. It was like a nice little audiobook to have on in the background while you're doing other things. I was rearranging my bookshelves, and it was just like the perfect thing to have on in the background. So cutesy little story. I definitely recommend it for anybody who just wants something to listen to casually. Nothing mind-blowing, but still pretty cute overall. I finished Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. It's by Heather Fawcett, and I am so surprised by how I feel about this book. So I read this with 2 of my in real life friends for our little book club that we named the Snail Tales Book Club, because we're all slow readers when it comes to book clubs and stuff. We procrastinate very much, so we decided to bank on it being a slow going book club and take our time with this. So I have already finished it. So I ended up finishing it the day after we had our first meeting, and I have quite a bit to say that I couldn't share with them yet because they haven't finished this book yet. At first I was really unsure about it because I started off in the first 60 pages or so feeling like this was not the story for me. The writing was just a little bit too, I don't want to say advanced for me, but just too descriptive, too flowery for my liking. We know that I'm not the biggest fan of that. So I was slogging through a little bit. I did have the audiobook to help me, but I wasn't really interested because I don't know a lot about Fae either. So that whole lore and background that we got into them at first wasn't really interesting me. But then I think we got to about 60 to 100 pages and I started to like it more because we had a character named Wendell introduced, and he really livened things up. So this one is about Emily Wilde, and she is a scholar who studies Fae, and she is in this very cold place. I cannot tell you where she is, but she's looking up a lot of their history and stuff due to Fae activity that's going on there, and she wants to compile it all into a book. And Wendell is somebody who works with her at Cambridge, and he has decided to join her on this, and she believes that he is also Fae. So things happen during this that have to do with Fae. There's a lot of Fae stories and folklore, and it's really interesting. I ended up being way more interested in this than I expected it to be, and I feel like the levity that Wendell brought to this made it so much more intriguing because there is like a bit of a love story between the two of them, and that made all of the more boring bits of Fae lore liven up a little bit. So I enjoyed that part of it. It had a very, very, very good balance of both things, and I ended up being more interested in some of those stories and tales that she wrote into this because it's Emily's encyclopedia. So it's like Emily is writing this book even though she's just the character. So I like how it was told. I liked the way that it was put together. There's little footnotes and stuff in here too that make it feel a little bit more like an academic book instead of just a fiction novel. So it's really cute. I will definitely be picking up the next one when it comes out. I hope any of what I just said made any sense. I feel like I just mushed all of my words together. It is cute. It has fairies. It has a cute love interest. It is also set in early 1900s, so it's a little bit of a feminist book because she is a woman in academia, and that was a tough time for women in academia. So I enjoyed it. I am surprised that I enjoyed it so much, but I did. So definitely recommend if you have not already picked it up. It is slow going, but so fun once you get into it. So I finished this out this morning. I read the first 3 fairy tales yesterday, and then this morning I read the 4th one. And it was something. It was something. It was very much of the same vein of the Tales from Verania series, which is just a wild, crazy, silly, funny ride. And this one, same. It is so much fun. It's also just one of those, like, oh my gosh, TJ Klune, did you really? And I'm doing a poor job of explaining it, but essentially he takes 3 fairy tales. First we have Rapunzel, second we have Jack and the Beanstalk, and third we have Cinderella, and he just spins them in his own very kooky way, in his very not suitable for work way. And it's hilarious. It is really hilarious, especially if you loved the characters from book 1 and their antics and their jokes and their humor and their just outrageous way of being. You'll like this. With Rapunzel, I feel like that one didn't stick out to me as much. The Jack and the Beanstalk one, I did really enjoy. That one was pretty fun. The Cinderella one was I can't even. It was the most wild of the stories, the absolute most wild of the stories. I feel like I can't even recommend this book in good conscience to anyone who wants to keep their innocence, you know? So, not for children. These fairy tales are not for children. These are strictly for adults who do not get offended easily. Okay? Then, Fairy Tale 4, much more serious. That one is a canon-based story, where the other 3 were just like made up stories of the characters to essentially make each other laugh. And the 4th one, though, was kind of a prequel story to a couple of characters that were mentioned in book 4, I think, if my memory serves me. Those 2 characters I feel like I can't name, or else it might give away a few spoilers, but it is their history together and how their endings came to be, where they ended up came to be, which was emotional. I cried. But are we shocked? It's TJ Klune. Like, I cry over everything, even the most raunchy of fairy tales that he writes, you know? But that last one wasn't very raunchy. That one was like more serious. He does do serious well, but it was definitely more mellow than the other 3, which were a wild ride. So I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I recommend the series, but I don't recommend it widely. I want more people to read it so that we can laugh about it together and gush about the characters and cry over those serious moments that happen in the book. But I know that this series is not for everybody, even though I wish that more people would like it. And I do acknowledge that he does have some questionable things that he does sometimes, especially the biggest issue is with the name of one group of people, where I think that that's something that he should change in the future if he does decide to traditionally publish these with Tor. I don't know if that's ever going to be in the plans, but I do think that that is something that he should change, because it is a slur for Romani people, and that's just something that he needs to look into. So there are issues with them. They can be quite offensive in some regards, and people who are very innocent and sensitive to very sexually graphic content and jokes might not like these. But it was silly. It was silly fairy tales and then a heartfelt one, and I am eager to now continue on with the Verania world. I've missed it, but it's also just been one of those things you have to be in a good mindset to get the most out of it. So I'm gonna stop rambling now, and we can move on to the next clip. I don't really have much to say about this one. It was good. It was interesting. I don't know why, but it gave off cult vibes to me, even though it wasn't. It was super easy to read, but it didn't really do much for me. I read it really fast, but like, I didn't love it. I don't know. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I don't know if I can like recommend it. It was a good story. It had its good moments. The overall message, or the overall metaphor, I guess, was interesting. I enjoyed it, but I'm a character person, you know? I want to love the characters that I'm reading about, and I just felt like you couldn't get to know them because the story was so short. So this is basically about Mila, who was in the foster care system for one reason or another, and she gets to an age that I think maybe she turned 18 and she could no longer, or her foster family no longer wants to host her anymore, and so she applies for a job as a teacher of some sort, like a homeschool teacher on this farm, and she really wants this job super bad. And when she gets there, she goes through a bit of like an emotional journey from there, and I'll just leave it there because it is really short, like I said, and I don't want to give too much away. And it has ghosts. That's the rest that I will add, but it was good. It was engaging. I think I read it in one sitting, so it was a really super easy read, but it's not something that I think I'm going to look back on very often. But if somebody wants a quick read to add to the Goodreads goal, pick this one up. It was fine. Yeah, give it a try. Don't give it a try. I think that's really all I have to say about this one. I read Rock, Paper, Scissors, and I don't think I loved it. Okay, so I decided to, on a whim, read this on the plane ride home after I visited some friends, and I was doing it mostly because I needed a bingo for the fall into winter readathon, and I thought it was gonna be good because I've heard really good things about it, and it wasn't bad. This really did surprise me with the twist that happened in it, but the writing wasn't working for me. I don't know what it was, but I felt like every other page this author tried to put in like a really thought-provoking quote, but it just happened so many times that I was cringing back every time that one of these would come up. It felt so out of place, and maybe that happened to be the narrator who kind of made those lines feel like a moment, and I was just getting so frustrated with hearing that. It just didn't sound genuine in the writing. So I think that was my biggest issue with it. I wish I would have highlighted it, but I was reading on my Kindle and it was lagging so bad on the plane, so I didn't highlight a lot of them, but it stuck out to me. I was annoyed, but I liked the twist. The twist was really, really good. Did I even share what this one was about? No, I don't think I did. So it's about a husband and wife who are going away on like a gifted vacation, and the husband happens to have some sort of condition where he has complete face blindness. He doesn't recognize anybody, doesn't even recognize himself in a mirror, and so that's causing a lot of issues in his marriage at this point in time. It was really interesting. It was really interesting, but the writing style was just grating on me by the end of it. I was so happy to be done with it. So yeah, I guess I recommend it if you want just like a fun time. It was a really quick read, but yeah, the writing just wasn't my cup of tea. I wish I would have done like 25, 50, 75% checkups when I was reading this book, because I did have a lot of thoughts as I was reading it, but now that it's been a couple of weeks since then, I don't remember all of those thoughts. But overall, I did end up really enjoying this one. I am trying to decide if I liked it more than Winter's Orbit or if I liked that one more. There were a lot of similarities, I felt like the character dynamics between these two main characters and the ones in Winter's Orbit were very similar. I know that the world is the same, or the same galaxy that they're in, so the political drama was also very similar, but I think where I settle is I like the plot of this one more, but I liked the relationship of the two main characters in Winter's Orbit more. But Paige, what is this even about? Okay, let me tell you if I can remember. So we have our main character Tennel and then our other main character Surrett. Tennel is the nephew of a government official, and he's just kind of been in and out of doing things that he's not supposed to be doing, running away from his responsibilities and blah 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 blah. His aunt gets annoyed with him and sends him into the military. And part of the society that they are living under, there are people who are readers, and they can like read people's emotions and almost like their thoughts too. And then there are writers who can change people's emotions and kind of manipulate them into doing what they want them to do. And so Tennel's aunt decides to have him synced to a writer so that he can become more under control, and she assigns Surrett to be this sync and get Tennel more under control. And because of that, Tennel and Surrett have to form a sort of relationship and figure out a way to make this sync not happen, because neither of them actually want it. I could have done better on that explanation, but there's a lot of political drama and there are other forces at play in this one, and they have to fight against those and form a relationship along the way. And it was really interesting. I was very intrigued by the world in this one, where I wasn't in Winter's Orbit. I was almost bored by the political drama in Winter's Orbit, where I only wanted the relationship. I liked the warm and fuzzy feelings I was getting from their relationship and their bonding in Winter's Orbit. This one, I felt like the characters, as I said at the beginning of this, were so similar to Winter's Orbit that I felt like I was reading the same dynamics again, and that was just a little boring to me. I guess not necessarily boring, because I did enjoy them together and I enjoyed these characters and how they were fleshed out, but it just felt like I was reading the same characters in a different setting, you know? So that was my only downfall with this one, but I still did end up giving it 4 stars. I do want to go back and reread Winter's Orbit at some point, and then maybe reread this one again and see if I can differentiate them a little bit more. But I had a good time. I would be excited to read anything further in this series because it was fun. I liked it, and I think that's all I have to say about that one. Okay, Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. So I didn't love this, but I think that as a whole, the story is really intriguing. I think that the world that was built is really good. I think the characters were well done. The plot is good. I personally just didn't enjoy it because I don't have any background with a lot of religion. I don't have a background in understanding parts of the Bible or anything that's in like scripture, and anything along those lines. When it is heavily included in books, I tend to just be confused because I don't understand the references and the connections between that and the Bible and whatnot. So this one is very heavily religion based, and that confused me a lot of the time and made me just not interested because that's not where my background lies. But this one is about a boy named Benji, and he has been on the run from a cult that raised him, and this cult has basically put upon Armageddon to the world, wiped out a lot of the world, and Benji runs away to a group of survivors who happen to be an LGBTQ group of teenagers. And the setup is fun. The world is really well done. It has a lot of body horror and gore, and it's scary in some aspects of what this cult did to the world and what they are doing to their people. So there's a lot of gory details that were really well done. I also just think that the world setup was really good, but admittedly there were a lot of dramas between these teenagers, which is fine. I feel like there's still going to be drama in the apocalypse, but I just can't say that this book was for me. I don't feel like I should tear it apart by any means, because I can acknowledge that there's a lot of good to this story, and I liked the LGBTQ representation. I liked that our characters were like really mentally strong and did a lot of communication, and it had good elements to it. I just don't personally connect with it in any way because there was a lot about it that I just didn't understand, and I think that's just from my own background, and I think that's totally fine. But if you are interested in religion based or escaping from like religious cult type stories and a lot of body horror, it is definitely, trigger warning on the body horror, it kind of grossed me out at some points, and I'm not easily icked out by stuff like that, but it was kind of gross, then you might like this one. I think it's a good story. I think it's a good story. It just wasn't for me, but I do recommend it to others who want to read something a little scary. I wish I liked it more, but I don't think it was for me. We read her, we loved her. Are we surprised? This is so fun. This is so fun. I can admit that this is so much like ACOTAR or any other like young adult, new adult fantasy series. There is a magical school of a sort. There are dragons. There are love triangles and main characters who are a little bit too in their own mind and are not like other girls, you know? But it just hit all of the things that I think are fun in books. It was fun. I didn't want to put it down. I got annoyed that I had other plans that kept me from finishing it all in one day. So I thought it was so much fun. I ended up giving this 5 stars. I feel like I don't even need to, whoops, my lighting is all over the place. I've been playing with my camera settings for the first time ever, so I'm sorry if I'm like dark and then bright and whatnot. I'm learning. But do I even need to explain what this book is about? I don't think I do. Essentially, there is a main character named Violet, and she is sent to go into a track of becoming a dragon rider, where her entire life she has been raised to be a scribe. That's what she thought she was going to do with her life and live in her kingdom, and that was going to be how she contributed. But her mother makes her go down the dragon rider path, and so she is put through a lot of trials and tribulations. She also seems to have a bit of a disability where her like joints and muscles are just not as strong as they could be, and so she's struggling in that aspect because she's not as strong as all of the other potential candidates to become dragon riders. So there's a lot of that going on. She also has a male best friend who is very protective of her at this school and is trying to do what he thinks is best for her. She also has a couple of rivals and enemies, and it's a good time. I just thought it was fun, and I love dragons, so this made me so happy. Literally the second I was done, I got off the couch and drove to Target and bought the next book. So if that's not any indicator on how I felt about this book, I just think it's fun. I think it's fun. I don't think it's perfect. I think there are some things that could have been improved, could have been drawn out a little bit more. There are some things that could have been completely cut out and edited down. But one thing I did really love were the communication skills between a lot of these characters. I felt like where most young adult, new adult books, even adult books sometimes lean into is miscommunication and secrets and lies. And this one, I felt like the characters didn't fall into that. They kind of just talked about the things that were going on, and if something was bothering them, they just explained it and pushed forward and didn't let those miscommunications and misunderstandings draw them apart. So really enjoyed that, and I am so eager to pick up the next book. I just have a couple of books that I'm trying to read first because they're due back to the library soon, so that is the only reason I haven't continued on immediately. But I had a good time, and I hope the 3rd book comes out soon so that I can read the series all quickly. But I don't think I've heard a single word about book 3, so I might need to take my time with book 2. I just don't want to. It was fun. I liked it. Okay, I get that some people might not, but I liked it. I liked it. Okay, that was a lot. If you made it all the way through, leave me any blue emojis that you can find and let me know that you watched all of it, because wow, I love you. Thank you so much for doing that. And I think I'm gonna let you go now, and I will see you on my Friday bonus video. Bye.